We are.
FYI.
Fancy meeting you here.
Yes. Fancy.
Fancy.
Hold on. I have a green room button. There it is.
Oh, that was good.
You like
that? Was good. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, I usually get really mixed up with the hand.
It only takes 6 years.
Where I'm on the screen. So. Yeah. Do you have your buttons labeled now? We've talked about that before.
Well, they've improved.
Yeah.
Whether I can manifest the skills to implement is another game plan. Yeah. However, we were talking about our friend Lionel Messi. He's not our friend, but a friend of the pod.
Mr. It says, "Oops, connection lost." Can you hear me?
I did say, yeah. Well, you're back. Yeah. I missed. Yeah, you froze for a sec. I freaked out. I panicked for a second because I'm not the soccer guy / football. And then it froze, and I was like, "Oh God, I have to talk more about soccer."
Like I've got this lead up. MLS is back.
Inter Miami.
And Inter Miami, is his new team.
But then they will also play multiple international tourneys, right?
Correct.
There's 36 games in the league. NPR teaches me a lot of things.
Wow.
So there's 36 regular season games, but there's plus.
Yes, there's
multiple tourneys.
It's the football. I mean, it is the beautiful game, and that means that it should happen all year round. Effectively, right? There's a little break in there, so they can spend time.
Probably could happen year round.
Yeah, they have to be able to get away from the game for like a month, but that's it. Little vacation, and that's it.
It's called vacation, right?
Yeah.
So I did. I'm trying. I'm doing my best, Jamie. I'm trying to participate in the process. Of a sport that you are, I will admit, near and dear to your heart. I'm not saying it's not near and dear to mine, but it's not as close to the radar screen.
Yeah.
And I'm working on it. And you know this. We've talked about this over the years. Many people are aware. Yeah. Kurt gives it. He's A for effort.
Yeah.
Me.
You are learning so much.
I'm paying attention.
Yeah. I mean, folks, we've got Kurt going to they're not second division, they're like third division.
Yeah, the Flint
Flint City Bucks. So Kurt is going to third division soccer locally to support his club.
Super fun.
That's pretty good.
It's fun. It's, and if I can have fun with this, part of it's just being local,
right?
I think a big part of the fun is the fact that we got this club. Plus, they happen to be pretty darn good.
Actually, pretty good, yeah. Well, and so here's the controversy. That right now, and this. There's going to be a tie-in, folks. There's going to be a tie-in to architecture and small supporting community. Like Kurt was just alluding to, we need like a diagram. We need Venn diagrams here.
One of these days, it'll get there.
We're gonna have a whiteboard, and we're gonna turn to the teleprompter. And John Madden,
the whiteboard. We just
John Madden's gonna come in. Kurt's gonna get out the whiteboard.
Resurrect John Madden from the dead.
He's gonna do a turducken on the board and show us how those soccer formations all work. And he's going to explain.
I don't know about John Madden, but us.
Yeah, and you're going to explain offsides to the rest of the folks.
Offsides. Yes. Well, as we know from, how about this? Let me pivot back to Jamie. This is green room stuff, so I can pivot back to Jamie and put the heat on him. Have you watched Ted Lasso?
Oh yeah.
Oh, you finally caught up. Okay,
yeah,
good.
I caught up. Yeah, I got
the offsides joke makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah. No, I watched the whole thing. I did catch up.
Good. You know what I'm saying then, right?
Oh yeah.
Because I still don't get it. Me and Ted, we're in the same boat. You're Coach Beard, and I'm Ted or some guy that likes Ted.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where we are.
So controversy is there's this. You were talking about, there's multiple extra games and tournaments and things. So in the United States, there is a tournament that's over 100 years old. What?
In the U.S.?
In the U.S., there is a tournament that is over 100 years old.
What's it called?
It's called the U.S. Open Cup.
Oh, sounds legit.
And it's even named for Lamar Hunt. So it's the trophy is the Lamar Hunt Trophy.
Oh, I've heard that name.
Yeah, Lamar Hunt should seem familiar. Kansas City Chiefs. So the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs also loves the soccer. I mean, he's deceased, but he loved the soccer, right? He helped bring the World Cup in 1994. He established some clubs. He helped sort of birth the MLS league. Anyways, that's not important. But it is important. It is important, not important for this story. So, U.S. Open Cup, okay, is the one chance for the little guy, the David in this scenario, to defeat the Goliath. Okay, it is a multi-tiered tournament. So your Flint City Bucks can basically work their way up the pyramid in this tournament. And eventually, if they stay in it and they keep winning, even though they're a lower division team, they could be playing some of those messy clubs in the United States.
Wow. Okay.
So that's the way the tournament works. And it's modeled after other tournaments in other countries, most famously the FA Cup in England that does the same thing. So if you've watched the Wrexham stuff, you know about that. Important. Okay. And again, it's a tournament. You got to play the game on the field or the pitch. So anything goes. You don't know what's going to happen. If your team shows up that day, you might be able to take out Goliath. So all that being said, this week, MLS is back. The big premier first division U.S. soccer, famous. It's got Messi playing, and the league's growing and growing. Good stuff. They decided, we've got some other plans, so maybe we don't want to show up to that U.S. Open Cup this year.
Really?
Yeah. And so they felt like it doesn't kind of work with our schedule, which is a whole lot of crap. Again, tournaments have been going on for 100 years. Everybody knows it's happening.
Its dates are pretty consistent, I would imagine. 100 years.
I mean, it kind of changes, but you kind of know what the system's like.
It's like our, in our world, the AI conference is always usually around the same time. Right?
Yeah, you kind of know what you're going to get.
You should be blocking that out.
Yeah, hey, just kind of pencil me in, for this time of year.
So you're saying the MLS leagues are being a little wishy-washy about, or are they 100% out?
Well, initially they were like, it's not going to work for us.
I feel like that's hurting the game.
Yeah.
You got to have, if it's the U.S. Open, you got to be in, if your team is in the U.S.
And
this is total outsider logic.
And Lamar Hunt. Yeah. I mean, it's not like, and it's not like these MLS clubs don't also win the tournament traditionally, right?
Right, sure.
They're entering at a later phase, so they're not having to work their way through a bunch of games.
Tiers,
and tiers of stuff. They basically have to play 5 or 6 games to win the trophy. That's about it. Okay, and most teams, it's not going to be a burden for everybody because most teams are going to, they're going to start losing games, so they're not even playing the full 5 or 6, right? So all that being said, there's been some controversy, and now no one knows how many MLS clubs are actually going to show up to the tournament. So, let's, don't hold our breath.
I think our culture as a human race loves the buzz.
Yeah.
Of a controversy.
Well, and the funny part was
better,
all that comes
better
out.
or worse.
Yeah, I mean, and all that comes out just to, I mean, it's like you know, as soccer's are growing in the United States and getting more exposure because of people like Messi coming over, right, and playing well, mind you, and getting more eyes on the screens and on the fields and all that good stuff. It's all good, right? We're not even talking the dollars and all this stuff,
right.
Or the Apple TV deal or all that.
We haven't yet even broached that subject.
Yeah, we're not even talking about that, right? So you got all that going on, all good, positive, and you're stubbing your toe because you're like, well, maybe we want to pick and choose, which games we're going to play. Come on, So there's
there's a term for that. It's kind of like I can't think of it right now, so you'll have to cover my bases. But it's like the spoils of being like a elite or premier, right? It's sort of the like being
too big for their britches,
right? That's probably pretty much that's probably the best one.
Yeah.
Hopefully that translates across all the demographics and language barriers that our podcast does reach. Because
I mean, yeah, we
don't talk about it much, but it does we have international reach, which is something to be said.
Yeah, I mean,
we don't like talking about it because we don't like talking about it, but it has no bearing on the fact that we talk about soccer from time to time, except for the fact when it does bear on an international sport. Anyway,
it is the world's game.
You know me. I'm not a braggart.
No.
Jamie's not a braggart. But sometimes, people, the only reason I bring this up is that sometimes friends of ours ask us these questions about stats and things like that. And then Kurt has to go into the computer and start digging around.
I like that. That's good.
And I pull up data, blah blah blah. But it is fun, and I appreciate it. Our listeners are international. I super appreciate it, and Jamie would agree. We both love the fact that we are reaching an audience across the world, and we love to continue that. We do this for all the people. However, we don't do it for the stats. We do it for the sharing of information. And the farther that info gets out there in the world, the happier we are. But the least concern is the numbers. But every once in a while, the friends ask the numbers.
Right.
And you got to provide a little bit of data.
Well, and we did learn that like most podcasts don't even make it past like episode 10 or something like that. So,
yeah.
We're way past that. Way past it.
But it's fascinating the reach. It's humbling. I'll just say it's humbling to me, and I'm sure Jamie would agree.
Yes.
that it's touching all. Well, let's say 6 out of 7 continents, because unfortunately, I don't think Antarctica has permanent residents.
Well, they have semi-permanent residents. We don't know how much they like the coffee sketch.
Right. So we won't. Yeah. We can't brag 7 continents out of 7, but we can do 6 out of 7.
I was going to see. I felt like there was going to be some Kurt math in there, but I'm glad there wasn't. No, but yes, back to our finishing the Messi story. The first game of the season was last night. And Messi won. Inter Miami, David Beckham's team. They won. It's there's a lot of people who are
pressure. Right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's you got a lot of pundits, you got a lot of fans, you got a lot of supporters from other clubs, and who are, like, it's all star studded. It's Barcelona in Miami. It's, it's all these things. But I will say that it's pretty fun to watch. He's still pretty much at the top of his game. 36 years old. I said to Kurt kind of last night, it was watching Messi like drop bodies on the field. It was pretty great. There's one ridiculous clip that's kind of going around on the socials right now that I knew would be going around on the socials, having watched the game live, not live in person, but live on TV. That there's a sequence where Messi's gets the ball kind of in the middle of the field, about 30 yards out from the goal, and starts to make a move kind of horizontally at the top of the box. The other team, one of their defenders had already fallen down earlier in the play and was sort of clutching at himself, like in pain, kind of writhing on the field, kind of hoping, I think, that the referee might stop the play or the ball,
draw a foul there.
Yeah, draw a foul, or the ball would go out of bounds. I think he actually was pretty hurt, not super hurt because it's soccer, right? And Messi at this point realizes, no, he's not really that hurt, and I have the ball and I'm in striking distance, and everybody's not expecting this, so I'm going to dribble, towards the net, taking on a couple extra defenders along the way. And he drives the ball towards this defender who's lying on the ground, and the other guy's teammates don't kind of know what to do. And Messi chips the ball, almost like a little skip, chips the ball over the guy who's lying on the ground in pain. Just chips it over. Oh, yeah. No. Chips it over to himself. Chips it over the guy, and then runs around him, and then takes a shot. And so it could have been one of those moments where this guy's immortalized in this clip if he had scored the goal, but he didn't score. So, yeah.
I gotta watch that though, because I was telling you off our recording. I was listening to NPR this morning, and they described that Messi did make an assist to a goal. He did not mention that play, and I wish he did, because, well, maybe I don't wish, because it was much more fun listening to you describe Messi chipping it over this deadbeat on the field who wanted to draw a foul. And then he went, it's like, quick crank. And I'm going to kick it over into the goal. But he missed. He didn't score, per se, on that attempt.
No.
So much fun. That's the game. These are the aspects that I'm finding super enjoyment in understanding the nuance. As a younger person, I'll say this. We've been in the green room for a little while. And I'm sure Jamie's like, oh, let's go talk about sketches. But he and I have gone back and forth on this for so many. I mean, we've known each other for so many years. And the fun part is, Jamie still probably assumes that Kurt is a Neanderthal in the soccer understanding. And you're most likely right. However, the more years I talk to you about soccer compared to the years I've understood American football, I start to appreciate more and more these sort of nuanced aspects of the game that don't exist in American football. And that takes a lot more to unpack than we can do right now. However, we've done it over the course of 6 years in this podcast, at least, and many more years before and into the future.
But I'm going to give you one more nuanced thing, and I'm going to make a prediction, and I want to do this while we're recording. Yeah. So
it's on the record.
So I'm going to predict that Messi scores an Olympico in this MLS season. Now,
okay, so now you have to define an Olympico. Yes, because Kurt has no idea.
I learned in watching a preseason match, also on the streaming. Inter Miami played Dallas. I love FC Dallas, and they were playing at the Cotton Bowl, legendary stadium, right? And during the broadcast, one of the announcers sees this play and says, "We just checked, with our stats people or whatever, or historians, whoever those folks are, and that would have been the first time Messi scored an Olympico if that had gone in, like in his entire professional career, like never done it."
Which I do understand is that Messi has basically accomplished everything there is to do in the game of soccer.
He is totally doing just side quests now.
Right now, yes.
Like
we
this
are
whole
in the realm of side quest land.
Yeah.
Like Zelda or whatever other game. Yeah.
He already finished the soccer.
He's done it. Yes.
Yeah. He finished he completed the soccer. The soccer is finished. He's just doing side quests now. So MLS is just a side quest. And I think one of those things that's on the bucket list for him is the Olympico in a professional match.
Sounds intriguing.
Doesn't it sound cool? Right. So an Olympico, which is so we understand what the corner kick is, right? So we got the ball at the corner of the field. The ball's gone out of bounds. It's your team's ball. You've got a guy who or woman, if it's women's soccer, who's standing with the ball. It's a free kick from the corner of the pitch. You remember kind of the pitch is a little bit bigger. It's wider and longer than an American football field.
Right.
Okay. So you're playing the ball from that corner towards the net, and you're hoping that one of your players is able to get a foot on it, get a body part on it, get a head on it. Typically, you're sending it up in the air, and you want the big bodies to get in there and mix it up. Hopefully, you get the ball in the net, right? Mm-hmm. And at that point, the goalie also it's really their job to kind of come out. Sometimes they punch the ball out. Oftentimes they grab it. Whatever. Right, they're deflecting it. They just don't want it to go in the net. It can be utter pandemonium. There's also ways to set plays and picks and the whole bit.
They call it the set piece. Right?
Yeah, it's the set piece, right?
Yeah.
So set piece from the corner, right? If the person who takes the kick from the corner scores it in the goal, okay, that's an Olympico.
Oh, without any assistance.
Without any assistance from anybody else.
Oh, that's cool.
So
that makes a lot of sense.
So
because that's hard. That's got to be hard.
It's super hard, right?
Basically, the wind, just scoop it. Look, if you could see the reflection in the glass behind me, right? Yeah.
Ooh, we're gonna get in a demo.
There's the kick.
Right.
And then it goes in the net without any assistance from the corner.
Yeah, because you're at the corner of the field, so you're at the end line. Call
the ambulance because I think I tore a hamstring.
Oh, he pulled a hammy. So you're basically trying to kick the ball in the goal that is effectively parallel to you on the pitch.
That's a fantastic name, the Olympico.
So you're curving it in the air. Right. There's everybody.
No assistance.
No assistance. Everybody's there.
So how often do those occur? Does the Olympico?
Not very often, obviously.
So therefore, so Messi has not achieved one.
Never achieved one.
Therefore, if this was a video game, as far as side quests go, this is one component that has not yet been accomplished by our hero.
Correct.
In the game. And in this case, the hero is Messi.
And so what was fun to watch, so in Dallas, he almost got it and surprised everybody, and kind of this stat came up right in the preseason game. And then, whatever, they went on tour and did some things. So last night, he's taking the corners, which he often does. And And as a set piece taker, you put the ball in multiple locations. You've got people that you're trying to play it to for certain situations.
I mean,
they usually have a signal, right? They kind of tell people what they're doing. But like the first 3 that he took, like he was just going for the Olympico, like,
oh yeah,
like just straight away, like, beginning of the game, he was just like, no, I'm going to go for the Olympico.
That's cool.
Like, let's solve this. Let's get this achievement unlocked. So,
right, unlock. That's a perfect analogy. Yeah, unlock the achievement.
Yeah. So I think it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
This is exciting. I'm so intrigued, and we'll have to keep following up. And Jamie reminded me that as a Apple what do you call it? Apple TV subscriber, I have access
sometimes
to certain amounts of potential Olympicos.
Yes.
So we will be following up. This is the pre-show, the part that gets streamed live, however, usually gets clipped for the audio. So this is like it's the preview. But this has been a fun one, Jamie. This is super fun. I'm so amped and jazzed right now. So we'll have to utilize this sort of green room pre-show.
Yeah, because sometimes we do dip into the sports podcast. Absolutely.
Yeah, we actually, when you were talking about some of the stats, Messi, and things like that, it reminded me of just how much we love to talk about architecture and sketching, right? I mean, the core, the essence of the fundamental of establishing this whole thing, right? The coffee sketch was about that. However, the fact that we talk about these other things like soccer or football and football show, I hope, right? I want to demonstrate the fact that you can become an architect and not have to just think about one thing in life, right? I mean, these diverse interests all matter too. And I don't want to sound like a total commercial, but
you're like a life coach right now. You're like the life coach I can feel it. Keep going.
I try,
and did this feel like a Run the Jewels moment or anything to you?
I like that. That's a very Run the Jewels, which, I don't want to name drop on our own podcast, but I know a guy who knows a guy who's, Michael Render. So, but maybe we'll save that to a future reveal.
Okay.
How about that?
We'll do that.
Because, Run the Jewels,
yeah,
their vibe as a musical act, I think very much matches what we are trying to accomplish here.
Wow, you went there. You just totally went there.
Oh, I did it. And
did it.
And only because I know a guy who knows a guy.
Okay.
And we're in the green room. Now, have this been the actual recorded for the audio, I might have been a little more let's say conservative about the conversation. But given that the green room is basically a free-for-all for Jamie and I and our audience. Anyway, I'll have to fill you in, Jamie, off screen on that. Because he is a Grammy Award winner, so we'll have to be sensitive about it.
You're just teasing. This is good. So, do you feel sufficiently warmed up?
I think so.
Okay.
This has been a super fun conversation, though.
It has. Do you know where the button is?
Well, yeah, I do. But yeah,
okay.
So why don't you
just checking?
Give us a little bit of a heads up, a little lead in, and then
I'm just trying to.
All right, everybody, follow us into the show. Hello, Jamie. How art thou?
How are you?
Well, if you were in the green, for those that are watching, yes, we have. I don't have the mug. I have this mug. But anyway, yeah, I'm good. How about you?
Good.
Oh, we're not. Oh, I captions. I messed up one thing, and this guy's gonna point it out to me. For those watching, for those listening, you didn't see that I had
You
the
didn't
wrong
see any.
subtitle.
Didn't see anything. Yeah, didn't see anything.
These
Nothing.
are not the droids that you're looking for.
Exactly. Oh, we are full of the references tonight.
Why not?
And that's not all.
I don't use that one.
No, that one.
It's a sparing. You can use it sparingly.
And I mean, and as much as it's like a pop culture reference, it's also sort of a. Are we getting old? Is that the kind of reference that like only appeals to?
I don't think so anymore.
God, I hope not.
I think our friend George Lucas reinvented that whole concept all over again.
Yeah, but that line though,
where we're not as old as, you know what I mean?
Well, because so
that
when you
particular line, yes,
that well
is
and
aged.
Well, because you remember like that line had a resurgence when we were sort of teenagers, when Cops was like a show, and you remember like the internet was like a newish thing, right? And people were making like cops with stormtroopers, like but in a comedic kind of way. Do you remember this?
I mean, I watched all the Cops, so yes, of course.
You're like, I'm a true crime aficionado, and that was like my guilty pleasure. Cops was.
I mean, Bad Boys, what you gonna do? I mean, come on.
But in stormtrooper outfits.
Yeah. I do.
Yeah. Okay.
So
wow, I didn't expect that this episode.
Some dating, yeah, right. Yeah, well, we surprise ourselves. I think that's the spice of life.
Yeah.
Especially for us.
Yes. That makes this genuine and unscripted.
This is the first recording that we've done since recording our episode with Evelyn.
Yes.
Which sometimes we love Evelyn and Practice of Architecture. Her podcast, Practice Disrupted, part of her Practice of Architecture family. However, I'll admit that sometimes I get a little, how do you put it?
Nervous.
While we are friends, Evelyn is also someone I look up to.
Yes.
Which makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, you were a little nervous. Yeah. And I mean, I was too, but we I think in both of our cases, when we're nervous, like
the spice.
Well, no, not even that. But I think that we exhibit different personalities, or we show that nervousness. Yeah, we show different nervousness in that kind of initial moment. But yeah, I think
it definitely started. Yeah, like you said, so it started out a little nerves, and then smoothed out.
Oh yeah.
But so my only point bringing that up is that I'm sure Evelyn is aware of the Cops reference that you just made. However, it's not something that we would have brought up in front of her.
No, probably not
makes sense at all.
No, I mean, I think she personally could appreciate it, yes. and there's a little bit of slapstick irreverence.
I think Jamie gives Kurt the leeway.
Yes. Well, you also do give me the leeway to kind of interject, and I am prone to do that. Hopefully, not perceived in a disrespectful
No,
way.
I think mutually. Otherwise, this whole thing wouldn't have panned out for any longer than
Those 10 episodes, that limit for podcasts.
Right, yes.
Kurt makes it to 11 and goes, I'm going to put up with him.
Statistical. Yeah, let's cut our losses there. No.
Yeah.
So anyway, we've got a couple episodes coming up. This is episode 148. I've been doing a little catching up with listening to some of our friends, which is not the premise of this episode per se, except for the fact that it's been enjoyable to catch up with Evan and Cormac and Evelyn and Janine on some of their past episodes, which I've been a little slow to uptake on. And it's just interesting to see what's going on in the world, right? Architecturally. And anyway, so that is my subtle segue toward what's gone on between us in the past couple of weeks. And there's a couple of things that I have that I'll wait on. But first, we have to get into our traditional topic of coffee. And then we will talk about our sketch. And so Jamie's already got the mug, which, I don't always do this, but I'm going to do it just for today. Is you saw Jamie with the Coffee Sketch Podcast mug. Why not pick yourself up a Coffee Sketch Podcast mug at this link down below? One of these days, I'll be a fantastic salesperson for these things. But anyway, thanks, Jamie, for demonstrating our beautiful mug with your beautiful sketch on it. But so for coffee,
that was my best infomercial. Like,
it's fantastic. It is also the Run the Jewels figure, which we're going to get into in a future episode. So we'll.
Yeah. Yes.
So I'm drinking. I've got a secret for Jamie, but I will flash the camera what I've got, which is a rootless bag. Hopefully the guys can see that. It's called No X in Espresso, as it's supposed to be pronounced, which is a dark roast, right? A typical espresso roast. Well, I wouldn't say typical, but in the traditional espresso roasting.
Because there isn't anything traditional about rootless.
Rootless, no. Right. Yeah, which I should have led with. But flavor profile, nutty dark chocolate, dried fruit, almond, velvety mouthfeel. And so I actually really like this No X in espresso very much. You've seen me have it. This is actually one of their newer, they rebranded or recolored the sticker and the logo and all that stuff. And so so that's what I've got in my cup. What is I already hinted I think in a couple episodes ago that this was supposed to be in the mail. It hasn't yet gotten into the mail for Jamie, but I'm gonna.
But I hear that. Oh! I get to see it.
I'm gonna show it on screen. Dr. Congo, in a very short run. The fact that I don't even know what this tastes like. I mean, I'll give you the tasting notes: dark chocolate, caramel, Concord grape, and dried apricot, which sounds fantastic. But
the artwork is it's got the whole
is super cool.
It's got the gas mask. This is like screaming Fallout Studio to me.
It's kind of like Planet of the Apes meets Fallout Studio. Fascinating. And so anyway, that's on its way. This will be on its way to Jamie, which I will not have tasted. And There's another short run that
There's more?
just dropped today that is called oh god, it's like Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind.
Oh, so there's aliens?
Alien coffee. I'm gonna grab a bag and also throw that, because it makes no sense to ship just one.
No,
So Jamie, this is the public announcement that you're getting this and that.
This is touching all the sci-fi, fantasy, like all the pop culture feels for me. So,
well, but that's the well, you're welcome. And the fact that like our friends at Rootless, Sean and Jono, are around our same, age or demo, they just kind of, they're, we all think a lot of the same things.
They get it. They get it. They get it. Yeah. No, it's
and
good.
So anywho, so that's the big reveal for those that can see, but otherwise, if you're not, actually, you know what? Here, for those that are newer to the podcast, if you want to find the coffee that I keep talking about, there's the link, rootlesscoffee.com. So I don't want to sound like a commercial, but sometimes you just got to be public.
Well, I mean, and they are our collaborators in the roast that they have for the official coffee sketch coffee that you can still get at that website. So you can click on the collabs button, and we are one of their collaborators, which is kind of special with some original artwork as well. So on the bags, so it's
we feel
it's an honor.
We feel just definitely heartened to be part of the collaboration crew. So, well, what about you, sir, Mr. Jamie? What do you got in your?
I'm not saying I'm suffering. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I'm suffering, but I'm not suffering. I'm not suffering in in a bad way, but I might be like getting to the end of my Mardi Gras community coffee. It has a wonderful hint of cinnamon in it, which whenever I do that, I just remember like, I kind of like that. It's this time of year, so kind of great. Nice surprise.
That's nice. Danielle, before we go into the sketch, Danielle and I were at a local. So we have the Flint Institute of Music, which teaches youth in the city of Flint. So there's what do they call the faculty series? So on Friday night, there was a guitar faculty member who pulled together a bunch of other band members and did a New Orleans jazz band, sort of walking band sort of show. They walked into the theater space, played a few songs, then walked us out back to the lobby. It was so much fun. It reminded me, I was telling Danielle, actually, it reminded me of our time on the Young Architects Forum when we actually, again, brings back Evelyn into the conversation when we were on the same committee and we had an annual meeting in New Orleans, it was in New Orleans.
It was in New Orleans, yeah.
And I mean, it kicked off with you and me meeting at Cafe Du Monde with coffee and beignet, and then the rest of the week was just full of parades every night. It almost felt just spoiled the fact that we were architects, and every time we finished a meeting, somebody had a parade.
Well, I don't know if that spoiled it, but it certainly, it certainly added to the ambiance of where we were.
It made us feel very special. It made me feel special. It's like, your meeting's over. Let's have a parade.
Let's march down the street. Yes, it was.
I gotta say, if that is the culture of New Orleans, I'm just totally in on why would you live anywhere else? When you can celebrate anything with a parade, is just such a fantastic uplifting experience. Anyway,
Kurt is going to
So-
snowbird in New Orleans, folks.
I'd love to.
when he gets older. So
So that was a fun show Friday night. Had some vibes of New Orleans. Jamie's talking about, you know, the coffee and or the experience that we had then too. Anyway, so all good vibes. So
all good vibes.
So should we jump into the sketch? Oh, before the sketch though.
You said you had some pop culture and announcements for me. There was like a shout out you said, or like a couple shout outs. So I don't want to.
Right.
You know,
yeah. Thanks.
I don't want to fast forward too quickly, and not give you the chance to share.
Right. I forgot. Yeah. So I want to. It's a little bit on the serious side, so I want to be sensitive to the subject. But the we've talked about how my students have been doing sketches in my lecture class on the Wednesday, like weekly Wednesday sketches. And we have another faculty whose dad is in a bit of a medical sort of situation right now, a diagnosis we don't want to hear about. And so I asked my students who've had this other faculty member in the past, right? So we all know each other, and we're all part of the Lawrence Tech University family. And I asked my students to provide the power of positivity through the sketch and just offer up a sketch of any kind that represented a get well soon card, right? And
Nice.
And thank you. And that, it's one of those things that it was not obviously not planned, right? You don't want to plan for these sort of things, but the aspect of this activity of sketching in my lecture class, as Jamie and I have talked about a couple of times, in just the essence of the activity, right? Getting the brain moving. We're all architecture students, thinking through our drawing and just generating some energy out of that aspect. And so my whole intent was pouring that energy into, which is a positive thing in my mind, right? The sketch is a positive thing, which is what Jamie and I are here for. These all these 6 years. And and I'll show a couple of creative solutions. I have here like a little paper boat with some images on it. I have somebody folded a paper crane, which is fantastic. And then there's a variety of handwritten and folded, letters. Normally the sketches of the week, which is one aspect of that's been interesting of this one twist, is I just asked for a sketch, right? So usually they take the 8.5 by 11 piece of paper they give them and they sketch something on it and then hand it back. But when they asked for a get well soon kind of message, a lot of them got folded into sort of card-like shapes, which I found very interesting of a reaction. I didn't expect. And I can't show them all because I have so many students and they all did so many just great things. So it's just very touching. And I want to really emphasize that I appreciate this more than anything, that the students responded in this manner to me, but also to a fellow faculty member who's struggling, who they also are familiar with, they know. And in my prompt, right, I asked for, the power of positivity through the sketch process, right? Like what we do as architects, generating good energy. And I want to say thank you, and I appreciate every student I'm going to hand these over to the faculty member that we know on Friday when I see him, so that he can deliver them to his father, who's in this medical struggle. And, I don't take it lightly, because this, as we age, these things, it's just no fun to hear these sort of things. And so any little bright spot that we can offer, is is a is just a big deal that should not be taken lightly. And so anyway, so these things, this reaction that I got from the students, is just overwhelming to me. And so I just want to put that out there.
Well,
My appreciation,
no, and I love that you did that you thought to do that, and I think it's really generous of you even just to want to share it on the podcast as well. I think that, like you said, it's as somebody who does sketches from people's prompts, and you're not necessarily, we've talked about the difficulty or the challenge of somebody giving you a prompt and then trying to respond to it with a drawing. We talk about it in October with Archinktober, and the challenges that sometimes I have in responding to a prompt. The fact that you've incorporated this in your lecture course and kind of broken through a bit with your students so that they kind of look forward to it, and appreciate the challenge. But then in this situation, responding to it in a completely genuine and heartfelt way, I think is it's testament to we talk about it like a superpower, our ability to sketch, but it's really you're giving a little bit of yourself, and you're being vulnerable when you draw, and you're being even more vulnerable when you share it. So a heartfelt note, a handwritten note, a card, a sketch like that, a postcard. I am definitely known for trying to do a postcard sketch now and again, when it's real special to me. So yeah, I think that's thank you. Just thank you for sharing that, and thank you for doing that. And I think everybody would echo that we hope things turn out well.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me put that out, put that on our episode. And it's just, yeah, I would totally agree. It's as far as the vulnerability, and I'll mention this, this coming week, next week in class, to appreciate the students for giving of themselves. And I think it only got better, or it was, how do I put it? It's so hard to put, but these drawings represent so much personality that I just can't. There's no measurement of appreciation. I teach, and I know a lot of my students, I don't think every single student listens to this podcast yet, but a lot of them do.
And that's not the goal, folks. It's not the goal. It's not the goal.
True.
Just a bonus round. It's like a side quest. It's a side quest.
Right, a side quest at the moment. However, I will encourage, because I don't know how if I violate any campus rules, but this is what matters more than, say, the grade that comes out of the classroom, right? Is the camaraderie, the relationship, the sharing is more important than a letter grade at the end of the day. Nobody's going to remember the letter grade as much as they remember the people they've been involved with throughout their either education or professional experience in a positive way. So,
well, I'll just I know what you're saying, and I think the only thing I would add is that our profession and our practice is not one that even if you're working as a sole practitioner, you're not alone.
Yeah.
In the work that you do. And I think that realizing that earlier in your career than later is, and finding where your place in that is, your individual place, where you're comfortable to excel or to challenge yourself or aspire to. I think, that's, figuring that out earlier, we all would love that. I think if you and I were to put things in like a hope chest for folks, I think that would be one thing that we would always sort of say is, and it's not one of those like, oh, well, back in my day, it's not that at all. It's more of, there's plenty of mistakes that we probably would say that we would maybe do differently in our careers. But at the same time, we also learned from them. So I'm not, neither one of us are one for regrets, but I think that if we were to hope something for folks, earlier in architecture or careers in general, it is the connections that you make. And not in a networking kind of way, but I think in more of a connection to another human being, whether it's a collaborator or a client or a chance encounter. I think all those things can really fill you up, with good things that you can sort of take forward. And I think what you're describing with your class today is that kind of a thing that you needed as well. I mean, I can hear it in your voice, and I know what that feeling evokes for me. So I think that's why we do share stuff on this podcast, is because we do want to say that we don't have all the answers by far, but at the same time, I think that there's some lessons that we've sort of learned and we want to share and hopefully inspire and and I think in the influences thing that you brought up at the very beginning of the episode today, I think is also part of it. There's this podcast isn't just a bunch of sketches about architecture. I think it's a lot of other things, and I think you have one today that we're going to talk about, kind of along those lines.
Oh yeah. Well, it's still one of your sketches,
right?
However, yeah, the concept. But yeah, thanks. I appreciate your share on that too, because, we've known each other for quite a while, but it still astonishes me how much you get me in all of this. Because sometimes I just feel like I'm a little too vague at times, but you do get me, and you see through and you understand what's at the core of the concept. And so I appreciate your insight too. And in regards to this particular sketch, most of the sketch assignments I try and keep light and maybe sort of related to the topic of the week and things like that. But yeah, I again, just super impressed that when I asked for this particular response, I was overwhelmed with something more than I expected. And like you said, that's a lot of what we're looking for, is this connection to humanity. So
well, and I'll just say too is sort of as a segue, is if folks haven't tuned in to the episode that we were talking about with Evelyn and Practice Disrupted, it was a pleasure to be on there. Can't thank her enough for letting us be in her season premiere of her 8th season. We wish her well as that sort of progresses. But there's a short little segment in there near the end of the episode, which I'll share, and it's one of those interjecting moments for myself that I tend to do, as anybody who's listened to any episodes of this knows. as Kurt, will tend to
Ramble?
No, I was going to say sort of try and find the words to describe something that really means a lot to him. And as he was sort of talking about the work of his studio, he was being a bit humble in that episode with Evelyn, and I just was like, that's enough humble stuff, buddy. You're doing some good work, and sometimes Kurt needs a good hype man. And so I decided, there are moments where I need to interject and be that hype man because you do the same thing for me. And you always have. And so I was happy to do it. And for those who haven't listened to that episode, definitely tune in to Evelyn's podcast. And we'll definitely put a link in our show notes so that folks can get over there to that episode.
Yes. Good reminder. And for those that are not aware, if only you listen to our podcast, Evelyn Lee is going to be the 2025 AI National President of our entire organization. And so, right
it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
She's kind of a big deal. And
but also a very humble leader in that sense too.
Oh, I mean, without a doubt,
the most humble, I would assume. But it was very humbling to be invited to be on her podcast, and to just catch up and talk about the experiences we share together, which we have alluded to all throughout the podcast. But so please listen to that. It was a lot of fun. It's good to catch up. And but anyway, without further ado, though, which not necessarily a massive pivot, but I'll drop in the sketch that we were going to talk about today, which is probably embedded with a few different meanings, just because of maybe there's a little bit of music, there's a little sketch, personal tastes in the music world, but or various genre, I suppose. But one that we actually is funny. This is not actually something from this week that Jamie sketched, because normally we do basically a sketch that is hot off the presses,
right?
And sometimes I'll admit, for the podcast, we miss some, so we have to go back in time a little bit. This one not so far back. And I don't know. I don't have the exact date. I could probably pull it up, but Jamie probably remembers. It's somewhere around the New Year, right?
Yeah.
And something I remember we talked about. Let's not skip this one.
Right.
And so today is the day. So Jamie sketched a fantastic sort of portrait, per se, of. If for those that are listening are familiar with the band Rage Against the Machine, their Evil Empire record cover has this handsome young man with a cape that looks like a superhero, like a Superman-esque youth. I don't, there's lots of various meaning that Jamie could probably dig into a little bit deeper, but Jamie sketched the portrait of the face, overlaid it on top of the record, not the CD or the tape cassette cover, but the actual album cover, for proportion's sake. Right? It's a bigger square, which is actually kind of so Jamie owns this as a record. Is the point
so
I'm trying to make.
So I've got vinyl, this was a gift. Thank you, M.
Was it a Father's Day or a birthday?
No, this was Christmas. This was a Christmas. This was a Christmas gift. And so, there was, M is very into music. That's something that we definitely have always shared. And I will say, as a good father, I did maybe, introduce her to Rage Against the Machine maybe earlier than most people would with their children. But yeah, no, this was so yeah, she likes to go to the record store and sort of dig through the crates. And this is sort of a new thing for her. And it was a nice surprise to see this as a nice vinyl gift for myself from her. But yeah, I think the thing that sort of struck me with it was this album. When I see things like this, or like, you kind of, pull them out and you kind of think about them, is this was their sophomore album, and usually you got a sophomore slump from any, that's sort of like the thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
And this was definitely not a sophomore slump for Rage Against the Machine. This was a killer album. You have Bulls on Parade, People of the Sun, Vietnam. I mean, like, it's just like, this wasn't stopping. This is all gas, no brakes from the first album. Yeah. And it also gives me an opportunity to kind of even think about that first album, which, kind of comes on the scene and everyone's like, who the hell are they? And I saw them at Lollapalooza.
So was that what, 97 or
93?
Oh,
yeah,
even
93.
sooner.
Was it 93 or 94?
It could be. Yeah.
But 93. But they were the opening act. Like, so Lollapalooza, the full bill, right? And you've got Rage Against the Machine as effectively the opening act for the whole bill, because they're on their first album and it's only just recently dropped. And they were awesome.
First album, oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like Pearl Jam 10. However, that's a whole other tangent, because they're going to start touring again and all that,
Yeah, so, I mean, I already was talking to you about Dark Matter.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
But we'll have to sorry to
clearly, yeah. So clearly music, I think, for anybody who's been who considers themselves a creative, whatever form that takes, there's usually, if you're an artist, architect, designer, anything of those sorts, and you've been in a studio environment, whether it's, personal, or if you're sort of in a collaborative, music is always sort of really key to that experience. And it's a way to learn about other genres, other musicians, other artists that you haven't heard about, because someone that you respect or collaborate with really likes them. Or it's you sharing things that you are really passionate about with your friends and colleagues and things like that. But those influences are always key. Music has always been something that's sort of key to myself and my creative process. And it's not all Rage Against the Machine, but can you pick a better name for a band? I mean, that's
yeah. I agree with that. Actually. And this might steer the conversation in and out of architecture, but the fact that this sketch for today, even though it fantastically sort of, first of all, it's almost a perfect match of what the album cover image looks like, right? So for those that are familiar with Evil Empire cover art, Jamie's sketch is it's a fantastic sketch overlaid on top, right? So sketch wise, couldn't be happier for the podcast, right? As an episode. But then it creates all kinds of illusions, ALLUSION, illusions, to something that we talk about. We don't talk about all the time on the podcast, but Jamie and I talk of influences, right? etymology, or not etymology per se, but not the what's the right word? A hierarchy, or a lineage, the genealogy, I suppose, of artists and architects, right? And one thing that I learned as somebody who studied in Southern California, right? So Rage Against the Machine sort of started in the LA area. However, uh, Tom Morello, the guitarist, who's super well known nowadays, and Zach De La Rocha met at Harvard
Yep.
University, Harvard University, not just Harvard anywhere. Yeah. As students in political science. But also then moved over to LA, Los Angeles, in the West Coast. We're also very close and familiar with Adam Jones and Maynard Keenan from Tool,
Hmm.
right? They're all of the same generation, pretty much. They're all sort of coming up at the same time, and had their own sort of reactions to things, and also the band members of Tool, had their own sort of philosophical sort of fundamentals that they were kind of trying to imbue into their artwork. But Rage Against the Machine, was very distinct, and through the voice of Zach De La Rocha, had a very political presence, politicized sort of presence to their artwork. And I actually, so I didn't see them as early as you did, but so when the Democratic National Convention happened in 2000, the year 2000, I was still at USC, and it was held at the Staples Center in LA. And I knew, so Rage was playing a concert outside the Democratic National Convention for free, which I heard about. And so I was like, I have to go. And so I got dropped off as close to the convention center as I could, and walked the rest of the way, and got in and watched, Rage. Ozo Motley opened up back. So in 2000, then you have a band like Ozo Motley, which I don't know if many people are familiar with, but I'm sure Jamie is. Became the opening act to Rage Against the Machine, as opposed to his Lollapalooza experience, where Rage Against the Machine was the opening act. And so, very interesting, as things progress and things like that, time goes on. But to me, that was a very formative sort of connection between some of the aspects of what I was going through school with in the late 90s, early 2000s, design wise, as well as politically, what exists around us, right? Like, what are we trying to respond to as a whole? I don't want to get too into the weeds in that regard, but we all are learning and then practicing within a context that we're surrounded by. And maybe I can bounce that
Well,
back off of Jamie.
and I think, and like you say, and influences, and I think that it's certainly one, that comes through the music. I know that you would appreciate this band. That's why I was sort of excited for us to kind of spend a little time talking about the sketch. But even just sort of talking about this sketch, on an architecture and art podcast, that includes a conversation over coffee. Look at, this is one of those ones where I definitely staged the photo very purposely, to show the scale of it, like you were talking about with the vinyl in there, but also just the implement, right? This is like a golf pencil. So I did this really a sketch that, like, and I don't usually start out this way. This one I'm really proud of. I mean, I think I really did a good job, rendering a portrait.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not something easy for me to say, because portraits are hard. I mean, they're not something that, if I'm not practicing it a lot, and I don't necessarily do a lot of portraits, it's a little bit of a mind shift, and sort of a little bit of a different creative shift. But because I had this album, because it was a gift, because I loved the music, because I was looking for kind of a inspiration and impulse, this was a great opportunity to challenge myself. And of course, not even in thinking about that, I'm going to further challenge myself by using a really, really simple, probably irreverent, in a sense, implement, this golf pencil to try and do this sketch. Um, it's it's okay. It's okay to not, to know the rules and then also break them. And
Yes, for sure.
I think the thing about, even with that sketch, you can see a lot of line weight and a lot of texture, and it's not like using a really good, graphite pencil, or a series of graphite pencils at different weights to achieve the different tones in this drawing. Even the swath of hair at the top that's really got a really great kind of black, kind of gray, dark gray tone to it. That's still all rendered with this little pencil. And I think that was something that these types of sketches usually start out very light. You're kind of trying to get the proportions correct. If anybody's drawn portraits before, there's some mechanics to where you can study the face and everybody's face, sort of the geometries of it, and the positioning of certain elements. Once you know where they are, and you think about it less as a person's face and more about shapes and their relationships to each other, then you can set up the drawing. And so that's where all this stuff starts. But it's certainly not that simple when you're trying to really kind of, get those textures right, get those shadows right. And I think at that point, the challenge in these types of drawings is leaning into the light and the dark and the shadow, and where the light's being cast on the object. In this case, like a cheek. So it's, you realize that cheek has some dimension to it. And so it's using that shade shadow to make that object almost feel rounded on a flat piece of paper. And those types of things are great challenges in a sketch like this, and a way to then turn around and use it for an architectural design. So it's sometimes good to just mix it up a little bit,
Yeah, no, thanks for drilling deeper into the sketch itself. The hairline, or the hair itself, has such a strong contour, as you mentioned, right? It's got that depth, and that the sort of the weight of the pencil into it, and then the facial features have a lot more lightness, or nuance, built up over layers. And so I appreciate you describing how you approached or developed, this sketch, and yeah, and totally, own the fact that, yeah, I think you did nail it. I mean, like, the fun part is, like, when you compare it to the actual album cover, and you got to look at the year that this occurred. This was probably what, 99 or 2000?
96.
96, yeah. Okay. So whoever created the album art, right, is not using AI, and I'm not trying to pick on people, but AI or any advanced methodologies, right? They're using their own hand in developing the artwork, as is your sketch over, kind of laid on top of it. But just hopefully unpacking how you described the various elements of the sketch, and I fully appreciated your breakdown of how to at least generate a sketch of a portrait, to take away the sort of essence of the subject as a person for a moment, just long enough to break it down to shapes and geometries that you can develop as a sort of component of a sketch. And that is a key to understanding just the spatial dimension of the subject, any subject, really. But faces are definitely much harder, I think, for more architects or artists, that are trying to think in that regard. And so breaking it down into the elements of the face, right? So hair, forehead, cheekbones, other features, things like that. So that I appreciate that. Hopefully our audience is sort of picking up on those elements in regard, and then we can always have a lot of fun with the subject matter itself, right? Like what we choose to talk about from week to week.
Well, and I thank you for appreciating and sort of indulging me to talk about this one. Even it was a little bit in the Wayback Machine, but I like sketches like this. I will insert them periodically into my my train of thought, both as a challenge to myself, but then when you achieve it, and you're proud of it, it does boost your confidence so that you don't have those sophomore slumps. And I think it's that sort of draw every day kind of mentality. But thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. And the one thing I did forget, and I'm going to close with, because I think we've covered what we were going to talk about in general, is how much I appreciate my students taking that leap with me in what you just said, and trying to render an image of any kind, because the prompts do change from week to week and things like that, and that can be a struggle, and finding a way to convey the message, convey the image through the sketch. So I want all my students, I know more and more are starting to listen, so that's why I'm going to say this, uh, and I just want to appreciate the fact that you go down this path with us, right? Because this is not something that is starts and end every week, right? Like this is the I don't want to use the cliche of the marathon, not the sprint, but it is the marathon, not the sprint, right? So we're doing this for the enjoyment of the whole process.
I think you just went there, but that's okay.
Yeah, I did. But yeah, so yeah, thanks again, Jamie. This is a fun one too. I'm glad we didn't miss it and we circled back, and so we'll make sure we don't do that again. We don't want to skip any good ones.